After a period of releasing some classic albums in the early 70s, progressive rock band Yes released another series of albums in the late 70s and early 80s. And these albums each have a very unique sound. Some of them have different lineups, others sound like music that was becoming popular in the 80s. So that's what I want to talk about today. I have the box set here, but since I'm outside, I wanted to use some natural light. I took some photographs and I will be showing them on the other side of the screen, but I just want to let you know that I have the physical copy right here with me. So basically, I'm going to be reviewing all of the albums in this set. There are 5 CDs that came out in the late 70s and the early 80s. It's a simple box set. There's 5 albums. They come in a cardboard sleeve, no inserts, no booklets. The CDs are original albums, and they don't have any bonus tracks or rarities. It's a simple box set. Really great to help you build your collection. I actually had somebody in the comments say he likes to buy these and bring them in the car because they're really easy to carry around. So that's another thing you can use them for. It's a simple box set. There's another box set that's a lot better and more expensive called the Yes box set, the studio albums 1969 to 1987, which is bigger. It has the first 12 albums and has bonus tracks and all that one. I actually don't have that one. I haven't seen it. If I do, maybe I will pick it up because I think this is a good band to own. Also, by the way, if you're new here, my name is John, and you may know me from my channel, JC Rock and Metal Reviews. I do lots of music reviews and rankings, but I started a second channel where I just want to focus on physical media. So if it sounds like something you would like, please subscribe to the channel. So this box set includes 5 albums, Going for the One from 1977, Tormato from 1978, Drama from 1980, 90125 from 1983, and Big Generator from 1987. I will be reviewing each album one by one, and I will give you some information about the different lineup changes or any relevant information, as well as talking about the songs and giving you my own personal thoughts on the album. Now I'm going to review the albums one by one. First album I want to talk about is Going for the One. I don't know what it is with prog bands and putting naked men on their album covers in the 70s. I know Rush did the same thing on one of their albums. It was something that was done, I guess. It was released on July 15, 1977 through Atlantic Records. The album is the return of keyboardist Rick Wakeman after a 3-year absence, and he left the band after Tales from Topographic Oceans. Another good album. I have that one downstairs as well. And the story behind this album is that this band took a break in 1975, so the members could record solo albums. Then they regrouped, went on tour in 1976, and now it was time for them to record a new album. This album was a new experience for the band. They went to Montreux, Switzerland, and they recorded at Mountain Studios, also the first self-produced album, as they previously worked with Eddie Offord. In the end, the album had a fresh new sound. The songs were shorter compared to previous albums, and the sound was a little more accessible, given that their last album, Relayer, was more of a complex album. As for the music, the album opens with Going for the One. It's an older song that was rediscovered by Chris Squire on a cassette. Features Steve Howe on steel guitar. I thought it was weird at first because it reminded me of early Rush with that Geddy Lee style of vocals, but it grew on me. I actually like the song a lot now. Then there was Turn of the Century, a song about a sculptor who brings his deceased wife back to life by carving a statue, and the only track on the album credited to just Anderson, Howe, and White. Parallels was written by Chris Squire, features some cool church organs. It was recorded at St. Martin's Church in Vevey, near Montreux, Wondrous, or near Montreux. Wondrous Stories is a song that has John Anderson playing a Portuguese 12-string instrument called the Vachalia, and this is also the band's highest charting single. It reached number 7 in the UK. Finally, we get to the song that most people say is the best song on the album, and one of the classics. It's a 15-minute epic called Awaken. The song has multiple sections with many different instruments like church organ and choral arrangements, and overall, I like the album. It had a sound similar to many of the previous albums, but just some shorter song lengths. Overall, it's a really good album. Next album is Tormato. This was their 9th studio album, released on September 22nd, 1978. This is the band's last album with the classic lineup of John Anderson, Chris Squire, Steve Howe, Alan White, and Rick Wakeman. And they left the band in 1980, and the album was recorded in London after a tour, which was very exhausting for the band. So therefore, the band faced a lot of internal disputes over the music. And this album got a mixed critical response, but despite this, the album performed well. It was actually their fastest-selling album in the UK and certified platinum in 2 months. And the band continued with what they did on the previous albums by recording a few songs with shorter song lengths. This album has 2 sides. Side 1 has the song Future Times Rejoice. It's a 2-part song. First part composed by Anderson, Squire, and Howe, Wakeman, and White, and the second half by just Anderson. The song also includes Chris Squire playing the bass and a Mutron effect. Thought it was a good song to start the album, and had a sound very representative of the band. After this was the song Don't Kill the Whale. This was composed by John Anderson and Chris Squire. John Anderson was inspired by a poem he had written on the subject. I thought it was another good song as well. I liked the use of the acoustic guitars. Then it was Madrigal. It was a short song, just over 2 minutes. A cool song as Rick Wakeman playing a harpsichord. Then it was Release Release, which had a bigger sound. I liked the song. It had a cool guitar and drum solo. Had some people cheering in the background. So, interestingly, they didn't play this live often as John Anderson had some trouble hitting the high notes. On side 2, there was a song Arriving UFO, a song inspired by the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind. I thought it was a good song, but I like those sci-fi related songs. There was Circus of Heaven, about traveling family circus. This had some cool bass playing by Chris Squire, especially the reggae style bass playing. Then it was Onward, a song credited to Chris Squire, another classic and a song Chris Squire considers to be the best that he's ever written. Last song on was the epic song On the Silent Wings of Freedom, which is one that has Steve Howe that said it was his favorite. Overall, it's a solid album. Had more of that traditional progressive rock sound. Songs were just shorter, and then the band was playing beforehand. Next is the album Drama, and it's aptly titled as this band went through a major lineup change. The album was released on August 22nd, 1980. It was the 10th album. The band had 2 new members who were Trevor Horn on lead vocals and Jeff Downs on keyboards. They replaced the key members, John Anderson and Rick Wakeman, who both decided to leave the band. Despite the lineup changes and absence of key members, I thought it was a very good album. It had that progressive rock sound. It's where they start to incorporate some of the new wave influences, considering that 2 of the new members came from the band The Buggles, which you probably remember from that hit video Killed a Radio Star. Side 1 includes a song, probably their most metal song ever. It's called Machine Messiah. It has a guitar riff. It sounds like it could have been on a Black Sabbath album. It's an awesome song, one of the longer ones at 10 minutes. And the song has lots of changes throughout. After this was a short track called White Car. Had some cool synthesizer sounds that resemble an orchestra. Then the song Does It Really Happen? The song was originally intended for the album Going for the One, and there's an earlier version of the song with John Anderson. One of those songs that sounded like the Buggles meets Yes. On side 2, had the song Lens, the only single released from the album. The song has some cool bass guitar sounds with a softer ballad section. Then it was Run Through the Light. It had Steve Howe playing a Les Paul guitar, Chris Squire on piano, and Trevor Horn playing the fretless bass. I read one review saying they compared it to Led Zeppelin's Battle of Evermore. After this was Tempus Fugit, last song on the album. The song has some cool key changes, and I read a review where they compared this song to the band Rush. Now the next album, this is where they go through some big changes, but also has that big hit, so let's talk about it. The album is 90125, released on November 7, 1983. This one has an interesting history, as the band broke up in 1981 after the Drama Tour. Then, Chris Squire, Alan White, and Trevor Rabin formed a band called Cinema. They made plans to release their debut album in 1983. But in a strange twist of fate, Tony Kaye and John Anderson joined the band, and they started to record the album. They called it 90125, but then they decided not to call the band Cinema and just call it Yes. So if you're wondering what is the number or what's the album title named after, it's named after the ATCO catalog number. For some reason, I always thought it was some kind of U.S. zip code, but it was a big album. It reached number 5 on the Billboard 200. This one begins with a big hit, Owner of a Lonely Heart. It was the band's only single to reach number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100. I like the song. It has a very 80s sound, a cool guitar riff. It actually sounds pretty heavy. Next song, Hold On, has some cool guitar playing and some classic prog influences. There was It Can Happen, which has this really cool, bouncy rhythm and almost folky sound. There was a very 80s sounding changes, maintained some of that progressive rock sound. There's a song called Cinema, which was the original name of the band, and probably the most classic Yes sounding song on the album, as the others leaned into new wave. Then there was the song Leave It. It has a cool a cappella singing. Some versions of the album actually have an a cappella version of the song. There was Our Song, which is more of an 80s sounding song with lots of big synth, more of a poppy sound, and it sounded like something that could have been used in some type of 80s cop drama like Miami Vice or something like that. Then it was City of Love. It had a dreamy atmosphere and some 80s synth. It was like what Genesis was doing in the 80s. The final song was Hearts. Had some brighter keyboards and a softer sound. Overall, those sounded more like a new wave album. It's one of my favorites by the band and maybe my favorite in this entire box set. Last album I have to talk about is Big Generator. The album was released on September 28, 1987 through Atco. A very 80s sounding album. I never really liked it. Although, after a few listens to prepare for this, I started to get into it a lot. The problem is that the front half is very 80s new wave sounding. So the first few songs might turn you off. But as you get to the second side, they kind of bring back a little bit of that prog. And it's also one of those albums, it's not as good as 90125, but it's not like completely horrible. And also, this album did pretty well. It had a few hit singles. So with that being said, let's talk about the songs. Like I said, the first few songs are very 80s pop sounding. We have Rhythm of Love. It's a rock song, almost like hard rock and new wave. There was Big Generator, had some hard rock guitars again. Lots of 80s new wave sounds like horns and synths and kind of like something you would hear on a Beverly Hills Cop movie, something like that. Shoot High, Aim Low was more of a laid back track with keyboards and sounded like the song you would hear on like fantasy movies. Almost Like Love has a fast drum beat, almost sounds heavy at first, then bring they bring in some softer, bright keyboards, so it sounded like something Huey Lewis in the News would write. Love Will Find a Way then starts sounding like 80s Rush. So at this point in the album, they start to get a little more proggy. Actually, I think they like took what Rush was doing and they copied it. Maybe I'm wrong. Finalize was another good song. Sounded more like classic Yes. I'm Running has some cool bass guitar, has some prog rock sound, has some calypso vibes, and a classic Yes sound. Holy Lamb is a stripped down acoustic track with softer singing and develops more into a rock song. Overall, the album has a better second half. The first half is very commercial, but the songs in the second half were not too bad. So that's all. Check out the video I did of Jethro Tull, who released albums around the same time. Like it was 5 albums between 77 and 82, I believe. And thanks for watching. Give the video a like. Helps me with the YouTube algorithm. Subscribe if you're not already. I do physical media reviews on this channel, so subscribe if you like that. See you in the next one.